Thank you. Namaste, James. Namaste to everyone. The word integrate can be understood in several ways. The most common meaning is to make something one, something which is other than myself, to make it one with myself. But ordinarily, the way we try to integrate is by absorbing and finishing the other. It's almost like in a mass. How do we integrate? By indoctrination. So, by indoctrination, after a time, the person picks up all the habits, characters, thought, pattern of life, and that he is integrated. Like, for instance, in the armed forces, that is the method adopted, and there probably it is necessary to an extent. So, this kind of integration is done by taking away the will, free will of an individual, the apparent free will. But this is not what we mean by integration. What we mean by integration is a harmonious synthesis of all the different strands of our nature, all the divergent activities, all the various needs that continue to exist within us, and finally to integrate with the world around, with creation, and eventually with the creator. So at least there are three levels, if I may say so, at which we integrate. And the most common, the most important one is to integrate within. So let's just look at it. The next is to integrate with the world, because if we have not integrated ourselves within, we cannot integrate with the world, because the world is a reflection of ourselves, a mirror of ourselves, and also because the world in a miniature way exists within us. There is a very beautiful saying in the Upanishad, pregnant with very deep meaning, and that is, within the pind there is the Brahmand. Within us is the whole universe. So if we have not integrated things within ourselves, invariably we'll see we will be at conflict with the world around in various ways at various levels. And then finally, the ultimate source of integration is the divine himself, the creator. So the first aspect is how to integrate ourselves, and for that we have to find the true center of our being, which many of us already know. We must be conversant with the term, the psychic being, the soul within. But ordinarily it is not accessible to us. Ordinarily what we call as ourselves is a surface conglomeration of habits, patterns of behavior, thoughts, feelings, impulses, wishes, desires, and they're all jostling in and out of what we call as ourselves. And this ourselves is nothing else but the surface personality, a temporary structure created by the ego. So this is what we normally try to balance out, these different aspects which are moving us on the surface, and we think that is what integration is. But as we all know that even whatever the neat facades of our life, deep within there are fissures and chasms, abysses, unfulfilled gaping gulfs, and as a consequence, a proneness towards misery, suffering, a constant state of inner conflict within, and as a result, conflict outside. So, in a way, we can say that true integration will bring deep, lasting happiness, because whatever is not integrated will invariably be a source of conflict within us. And every time that element appears within us or outside us, it will tend to create a state of dissonance which leads to disharmony and unhappiness. So, true integration is also the road to true health, it is also the road to true happiness. So, this is the basic understanding of integration. Also, it's a harmonious synthesis. So, each of these elements, they do not lose their individuality, or they do not lose their own activity or function. They are put in a harmonious unity with the whole. It's like the stars in space when we look at it. So though they look very chaotic, but when we keep on zooming, we discover that they are part of a large Milky Way, and that is so beautiful, arranged in such a pattern. So thus, if we look at life from the micro section, micro details, some people start micro tuning their life in small details, but that's not the path to integration. First thing is to find the center, and as I said, the center has to be either the creator or some element of the creator within us. But that is a long journey, so we'll touch upon it later. But first thing that is easily accessible to us are these three: thought, feelings, desires. Behind all these, there is something else, but we'll talk about that later. Obviously, to build a kind of integrate around desires, some people try to do that. They make desire as the way of life, the goal of life. They believe that through desire they will get happiness, and they try to integrate their life around desires, meaning thereby they try to live according to the law of desires. So, whatever gives them instant gratification and happiness, they try to keep in their life, and the rest they try to leave out. So, this obviously cannot create a kind of harmonious synthesis, and such a life ultimately is a life of depravity because it excludes some of the finest elements of human life. Thought, for instance, feelings, it excludes all of them. That's why human beings who live only for desires, for instant gratification, they eventually become prone more and more to anger, dissatisfaction, disappointment, momentary thrills, pleasures, and pleasure and its offshoot pain. And therefore, their life goes down because they miss out on some of the most beautiful fundamental aspects of human life. So, next to that, what else we can build a ground on feelings. Now, feelings are higher than desires, they are definitely greater than ambition. I am using the word ambition as part of the extension of the desired self. So, then we have feelings. Now, feelings on the surface, it's very difficult to integrate through the feelings because feelings are dependent on the surface through so many kinds of inputs that come from outside: sensory reaction, responses, what somebody said, what somebody didn't say, how somebody responded, reacted. So all these surface feelings are constantly on shifting grounds, and we cannot integrate anything on a ground that itself is shifting. If we observe ourselves carefully, we'll see that from morning till evening our feelings are shifting, and sometimes so strange that morning one gives a nice good morning message, and with the same person in the afternoon, evening, somebody whom one has said that you are the most wonderful person, and in the evening, one is wondering, you are the needle in my eye from the cynosure. So feelings are shifting grounds on the surface. Of course, if we go into the depth of feeling, we can find a key to integration. And we are not yet, speaking of the depths because that's a journey we'll undertake. And the third level at which we can integrate is thought or mind. Now, in ordinary surface life of man, thought is given to us to integrate. It is something because man is a mental being, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, Mana Prana Sharir Neta. He is the leader of the human march as of now. Before we find the soul, before we go deeper, at least at the level of thought, we can integrate. So, the first attempt we should have is to discover that thought around which we can integrate. So, let us study a little bit about thought. So, what are the thoughts that occur to us? Where do they come from? When we look at thoughts, we'll see most of the thoughts arise as response to sensory events. Take, for example, a mother gives this example, another example also. Supposing one is feeling hot and it's summer, and then one has to go out because it's very hot, and yet one has to go out for work. So when one goes out, one begins to feel, oh, it's so hot, it's such a nuisance. Of course, she gives a very beautiful remedy. She says, makes friend with the sun. Same thing happens when you have rain. But initially, and then a whole day, we are all the time contemplating upon that. So one of the things that happens is when we try to pick up a thought, we will see that most of the thoughts in us are driven by the senses and sensations. Then there is another kind of thought which is not an activity of sensation, but which is basically a thought originating from desires. So if we look at ourselves from day to evening, we'll see that a lot of thoughts are coming from this desire, that desire, and out of desire it builds a rainbow colored things, and these desires themselves come from outside, like when we are sitting by ourselves and we really, one day we have to just contemplate. One day, it won't require much. What is it that I truly desire? And the result of that contemplation will be that actually nothing. It's very, very strange. One day, sincere contemplation. And at the end of it, we'll wake up It doesn't require long time. And with the bodhi, that really speaking, we need nothing. So we'll see that these desires are coming out of habits and associations, because people are desiring things. Again, it's coming from the collective suggestion, from the environment, from childhood, from heredity. We are made to believe that we need this, we must have this, we must have that. I'll give an example. So most of us believe when we have some money that we need a vehicle. So I had this quirk trait. I thought, ki, why do you need a vehicle? If you buy a car, say for example, you basically buy a car because it's going to rain. So it helps you in rain, and there's a bit of comfort zone for you. But look at it that when you buy a car and when you maintain a car, it's quite a bit, you need to then, for the maintenance, earn money and everything. So I had a novel solution in my mind that you can hire an auto who is always ready. Or even if you don't hire an auto, you can always call a cab whenever you need for it, and it's a very simple solution. And then I found a person actually applying this solution in his life. He was a very well known, he's a film actor, and he's also a very top psychiatrist, and apart from that, he is well known in dramatic circles. And he this was his way of life. So he had just kept an auto rickshaw with a driver. So, I mean, and he would move around. And very well known actor, done very well. I mean, one of my teachers, so I won't take his name, but I found this an amazing quality. Now, this means that instead of accepting things habitually, just because everybody believes in it. So very often we'll see that our thoughts are governed by what everybody believes in it, because there is a comfort that if everybody believes in it, this has to be true. Or sometimes because we accept things coming from an outer authority, then we believe because it's coming from an outer authority, then it must be true. But if we lead life like that, then always the center of synthesis will be outside, and there is no way we can integrate. Because if we start living according to an external authority, even a book or anything for that matter, then we cannot really integrate, because there are so many aspects of life. That's why one of the beautiful things about Sri Aurobindo, which many people don't really understand, is they say that where is the path? Where is the path? So they want to look for some standard practices. And Sri Aurobindo would not tell us like that. It's not like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Eightfold Path. It doesn't say that. And many people feel it very disorienting. But actually what has happened is, he has given us all the fundamental truths and principles, and then let us walk the path, because the actual journey is in real time. It's not a journey where you have some fixed practices and processes. So it becomes like, if one has to use Sri Aurobindo's own word, he would say the path is everywhere. So it's not about this practice or that practice. So eventually, when it is said the path is everywhere, means you have to consult ourselves within. So thought must be analyzed, and we must reflect upon in every aspect of human life. Every aspect. We must lay it bare open with ruthless sincerity and try to see its own truth and understand its own truth. Let's take some of the thoughts. We must respect the elders. This is one of the thoughts that is very prevalent, and I'm sorry, elders may find it very uncomfortable, but this question should be raised. Why must we accept the elders? Now, when we look at the Gita, this is precisely Shri Krishna is telling Arjuna that why are you just blindly following what everybody is saying. It starts from there, that all the prevalent thoughts, ideas, I must respect the elders, my family, everything. No, it is something we have to make a choice. And the mother goes on to say that you have to choose even your family. See, we take it that this is my family, but what really is family? Is family simply because there is a family tree and a blood connection? Or is family a deeper soul connection, a common aspiration? And then when we start looking at life and things, everything, relationship, marriage, one of the commonest things that happen in people's life, that why marriage is necessary, what really is marriage, what is childbirth, then we don't actually have to read anything. All the answers we'll find inside. All the answers. Like people often speak about renunciation and very big words, and there are big talks upon that. And after a good lecture on renunciation, the eye is on the money which will come in the hundi. But actually, what is renunciation? This word has no meaning if you really reflect upon it. Reflect upon it as to what really I need. The mother gives this example and she says, at the end of the day, if you really reflect sincerely, you will say, she gives the example of a group of friends. So they said, well, actually, you'd need very few things in life. Maybe a toothbrush. So mother says he had not come to India, otherwise he would have said that probably you don't need that. And when you look at life around it, one will discover so many things just by this ability to reflect, to contemplate. For example, it was very interesting. I'll give you all the time one can experience this. Just taking a walk, there were some people who were in, saffron clothes, and it was very interesting to see them. So while I was going, I saw one person, sitting in meditation. They were just on the roadside, somewhere sleeping, somewhere. Then when I was returning, suddenly he was all excited about some WhatsApp song going on. Everybody had a nice cell phone. So this is not to judge, but this is that human nature. So what do we observe from that? That's how human nature is. You don't change it by simply coloring or dressing yourself. So when we look at human life, we understand that we carry within us many, many, many different parts. And the first thing is to understand each and every thought that we regard as our own. We must analyze, reflect, and then accept it. This is the first step towards creating a synthesis. And I'm not saying something, of course, I have done it from childhood. Which creates a very uncomfortable situation sometimes with every member of the family. But this is what the mother explains very beautifully in one of her early writings, conversations on thought. Those who want to read it, that everything must be thought over. And much later, she would say, we do many things just mechanically. Do you know why you are doing it? So it is a step towards becoming conscious. When we are not even conscious, for instance, just some time back, I was, you see, when we judge people, we judge by appearances. Oh, the person is very nice. But human beings have developed, mastered the art of deception. The mind has mastered the art of deception, and you realize that it's not about appearances at all, but something else that we need to see. So, this is how our surface life is led all the time, with all the various thought currents crisscrossing, multiplying, cancelling each other. And the first thing which is accessible to us is thought. And in thought, we will see that there are many, many opinions that we carry. And these opinions are nothing but dumped upon us through the collective consciousness, what we call as society. Sometimes it's so strange, I'll share some real life example. I met somebody, one lady who was married, and then husband, usual 8 to 9, not morning 8 to night 9, very busy. And then she felt neglected and ignored. Then, she strayed into even, going into drinking, smoking, various kind of activities. Now, when this came to light, then everybody discarded her own family members, saying that, you are a sinner, Papan. So she was in a state of naturally depressed and all this, and all kinds of medicines were being given to her for depression. So she asked me this question and the same thing, I got a message from all family members, please tell her to be good with her husband, good to her husband. She should take care. He's a very nice person. And she's saying, he has a ability to impress everyone, which I understand that, because you are one thing with your partner, you can be very different with the world outside. So then she asked that, am I really a sinner? I said, no, the sinners are they who call you a sinner. Because when you really look at life of a person, she not developed that way. She had she didn't know what is the option. And she tried to escape from a stifling prison house. Where would she go? She has no direction. So she went into the ditch. But instead of that, she could have escaped and climbed upward. This is the only mistake. This is not even a mistake, because the grip of world forces today is such that if you try to escape from a prison, invariably they are waiting. That's why these prisons and social environments were created, so that we don't, as Sri Aurobindo says, it restrains in us the titan and the god. It was so that life can move within boundaries. Unfortunately, the prison was only for the woman. For the man, he was supposed to be the Baal, what is called bullock, bull, who can move around like anything. So this prison house, when we come out, then immediately we are grabbed by the world forces. Now we understand that what was really happening. Then we can find a way. So it's not that these things are required, but because of the danger, inherent danger, that there will be a pulling down, there were these prison houses erected. But when we understand this, then we know that it is not a prison which is required, but education which is required, and upliftment which is required. Because prison doesn't change us. All the comforts were provided, which is what the situation of, a simple thing like women in India. You'll often hear that people say, ki, no, 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 it is important, otherwise society will disintegrate. No, society will not disintegrate if they get the freedom. Society will disintegrate if we don't give them the understanding that, not only them, all of us, the understanding that what is the true purpose of life. So when you come out of the prison, all of us must come out one day of the prison, we learn that there is a vastness of the sky above and we must move upward. So this is how we must pick up each thought, each idea that is prevalent, each and every idea. Whether it be an idea of the dress we wear, whether everything should be accepted. For example, reflected and then accepted. Take for instance vegetarianism. Many people are vegetarians because it's their family custom that they are vegetarians. So they are very proud that we are always vegetarians. So sometimes humorously I have asked them, but you take human blood, isn't it? So no, don't say like that. I said, but you see, when you hurt people, you make them. Their blood is dried because you are constantly barbing them. Aren't you doing it? You're burning blood inside their body. So basically, the point is that everything, every aspect of life, we must. So vegetarianism itself must be rationally thought out, and how to think about the highest reason that we can command. For example, reason also can be very elementary. Take for example this idea of vegetarianism. So reason can be that, well, we don't want to eat things which are living. Now then what do? You will ultimately eat only salt and sugar. Sugar is also extracted from something which is living, sugar cane. So there are people who go to absurd extent. So it's not about that. So when we just reflect upon a single idea like vegetarianism, its deeper reason, then we will discover many things. This one single reflection will change our life. Now, I'm not going into how I've created my own, understanding about vegetarian. So everything must be the result of a conscious choice. It should not be something enforced. It should not be something. See, that is the big gain of today's time. That at least what the democratic societies are meant to propagate is that you have your choice. Now, there are certain things where you can't exercise your choice, where you are consciously going and killing somebody or trying to harm someone willfully, trying to do injury. But otherwise you have your choices. Why? Because through choices we evolve. When we take away the choices, and this is one way of taking away choices, that we just accept whatever the society has said, and then we have no real free will or choice. I'm not entering into the debate of whether we have a free will or not. That's a different discussion. But these choices are given to man so that he can evolve further. So once we have this highest thought around us, then automatically the rest of the members must begin to fall in place. For instance, if we have the highest thought that respect must be to the one who deserves it by virtue of knowledge, true knowledge, by virtue of his genuineness of behavior, by virtue of his life and its conduct, and not because of age. Then what happens? Then it is not like just because somebody is more in age, I must touch the feet. No. He may be a Bhish Pitama, but I need not touch his feet. But he may be just a little child, and the babble of a child may communicate a thought of God. See, it's very interesting. It is said in the Bible that, or somewhere it is said that, the babble of a child conveying the thought of God. So how is it possible? Now just reflect a little upon this idea. So how it is possible? A child cannot think. How can the babble reflect? Now it is precisely because the child cannot form the thoughts. The child is not rigid. The child has a plasticity which elders lack. I remember the story of Sagar Manthan recounting to my son when he was 5 years old. And one day when her granny was in the house and she was talking with his mom, his granny, he was talking with his mom about some saris. And suddenly this boy who is playing suddenly turns back and asks her, Nani, you want Mohini or you want Amrit? Now he had his unique application. which in a way is correct, that in life we have a choice between the transient and the eternal. Often people ask this, why am I suffering? You see, simple thing again, how important it is to have a very organized way of understanding things by reflecting upon that. Often we get such things. Somebody asks that, my parent was a big devotee, and then, he died suddenly at 70s, or died of this reason, that reason. So people often feel that, it shouldn't have happened. So you have to raise a question, that is it like a devotee should never die or would never die? What really determines death? So we have the story of the Buddha. When somebody asked Buddha, you are God. He said, well, if you believe so, can you revive the dead? He said, if you believe so my father is dead, can you revive? He said, yes, go to every house and find out, you get 5 grains of rice from 5 houses where nobody has died ever. So he says, oh, simple. Goes out and says somebody or the other has died. Now, this was his way of explaining that death is not coming as a unique something to one person's life. See, that is how the Gita starts, that, Arjuna, what are you thinking? As if death has never happened to anybody in the planet. And if you believe that, we are nothing but dust, then why are you worried about death? Because there is really nothing. But if you believe that there is an immortal element, then why are you worried about death? So this is how we must try to pick up the highest thought and create a synthesis. Second aspect is that what is the highest idea within us? This is something we have to discover. It's a wonderful discovery. So what is the highest idea within us? So most people are not aware of that. If you ask people, it is actually the highest idea is a intellectual representation of something deep within. That deep within is will and faith, and if you go still deeper than will and faith, it is love. So that is the highest idea. By love I mean that what is it deep inside that we most really love to do? What is it that we are deeply from the core we feel not just passionate about, but we feel like our entire being should flow into this activity. So this is something we have to discover by interiorization, and we discover that in each of us there is a will and a faith to be. This will and faith to be is described in the Gita as Swadharma, and the Gita goes on to say so beautifully that a man is his faith. Whatever our faith and will to be is, that we become. See, it's something so amazing. So we are all the time busy with the surface where we pick up things. Sometimes we indulge in a very, both ways we indulge. Oh, I am somebody very great, someone very special. If we really look at ourselves, who are really we? It doesn't require a deep meditation to one day get up and say the ego is dead. It just requires some basic thinking to understand the body is not mine. It is the result of a, genes, heredity, and all my papa mama's gift, good or bad. What about my thoughts? Most of it is given by parents, environment, teachers, society. Same with feelings, desires. I'm sharing everything that is all around. So we pick up a heap of sunlight, try to capture it in our hands and say, this is my piece of sun. There is nothing like that. So it doesn't really require a great understanding to understand that which we call as ourselves is really nothing but a construct. And when we understand that it's a construct, then we should embark on the journey of self-discovery. And this self-discovery meets us first of all as the faith and will to be. So I can give an example. Very often, because gone through this process, that's why I'm giving these examples. So once somebody came and asked that, knowing that there is a spiritual seeking, so people want to draw you into their folds. Everybody believes that somehow, even in spirituality, people find comfort in numbers, which is the most absurd thing. Because if you have too many followers, then start suspecting what's wrong. Because too many people will go either where Michael Jackson is dancing, or there is a mega Shah Rukh Khan show, or you are being promised miraculous things that come and they will be hallelujah and you will get cured. Those are the kind of absurd places where many, many people go, where there is some desired satisfaction. But any genuine place where there is a true yagna, change of consciousness, for example, or a yoga in real earnest, will not draw many people. So, but people have this idea that whoever has a little spiritual seeking, bring him into the fold. They even have this tendency So I remember long back, must be in early 20s, but I'd come in touch with Sri Aurobindo and someone trying to convince me, why don't you follow this path? This is better, that is better. All kind of calculation logic. I said, but Baba, that's not my goal. What do you mean by goal? So I said, what is your goal? He said, Mukti. I said, that's what you have just gathered from everywhere around. No, this Janam Karam Ka Fera. So then I started my questioning. The argumentative Indian at his best. I said, who created this Janam Karam Ka Fera? He said, this is the law of nature. I said, who made this law? Oh, God made this law. I said, such a God who made this blind cycle in which you are thrust without your choice, suddenly says, I'm sorry, son, it happened by mistake. Now I'll lend a helping hand and you come out of it. So this is so absurd. I mean, how can you love such a God? So then when you say this is not what I want, so even in spiritual life, people have this vague idea. Everything is spiritual, everything is the same. But if you look at Sanatan Dharma, that is something very beautiful about Sanatan Dharma. It's so universal. Can we imagine you can pursue God by pursuing science? It is something so strange. So how we can pursue God by pursuing science? Because when we are in search of truth, if we pursue science, not because of any superficial reason, but in pursuit of truth, we'll touch God. Take the recent example of the virus. I'm taking this example just to cover a broad spectrum of things. So what happens in the virus? So everybody has stock standard thing that this virus, this is outer structure, spikes, RNA, all these things are going on. But we have never raised the question, what is behind this? Now, the moment we raise this question, we are pushing the inquiry one step deeper. Now, if science goes into that, then it will discover a marvelous world of teeming with vibrations, energies, forces. And then we will have a much better, simple way to manipulate these things. For example, how does a spiritual person really heal oneself? He doesn't heal this way that, okay, this virus has come and entered my body. What do I do? So I'll take this medicine and I'll get cured. He doesn't. He understands that vibration is a vibration of disorder. See, if you look at Indian thought, that's how it looked at it. Sattva, Raja, Tamaguna. So there are forces of Tamaguna. When we look at it like this, how life can become simple. What is Tamaguna? Tamaguna is a guna which leads toward disintegration. So when does Tamaguna enter? Tamoguna become active either when we are very inactive, when we are very lazy. Then a lower kind of Rajogun also can create a disturbance and imbalance. It's like a very turbulent wave. So how does the lower kind of Rajoguna enter? When we are in a state of excitement, anger, all these things. And then there are higher and higher and Satguna, balancing and order and harmony. So in any illness, at the end of the day, it is a vibration of disorder. It is so simple. So what do? Bring into it a vibration of harmony and order. That is how mantras help and heal. It is not because there is sacrosanct that only this mantra I will do. But when we do a mantra which contains within it a beautiful harmonious rhythm, just to play it in the environment, atmosphere. Or sometimes simply, have we heard how mothers, when the child is sick, what do they say? I mean, I remember it acts like a mantra. Don't worry, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. राम जी है ना, भगवान है ना. These words were so soothing. You are instantly you feel so safe, so secure, and you get well. Why? Because fortunately you don't know this kind of superficial science. But through science we can arrive at the discovery of the divine. Because He is in everything. Through art we can arrive at the discovery of the divine. Now when we take this vast approach, then we don't use the division between spiritual life and material life. Very often, people say, I don't have time for spiritual life. You don't need time, you need attitude and orientation. So when we start looking within that point of integration within ourselves, we'll see what is our will and faith to be, faith and will to be, then we'll discover it manifesting to our intellectual mind as a central thought. For instance, this thought could be knowledge. Let's pick up one example. One wants to know knowledge. So where do I find knowledge? Now, do I find knowledge in books? Certainly not. Books are, they are still knowledge. They can open a door to knowledge. They can take us to the doorsteps of knowledge. But books will not give us knowledge. They will take us to the doorsteps. You have to enter. That is how Sri Aurobindo says in Synthesis and Shri Krishna in the Gita, Shabd Brahmati Vartate. Some people are very happy playing with, scholarly, intellectual stuff. They read a book and they start saying, this is all Maya, that is Brahman. You neither know Maya nor know Brahman. And, one is playing with thoughts which are picked up from books. Experience what this Maya is. Experience what this Brahman is. So books will take us to the doorsteps, not beyond. But we can reach that point even without any book. See, there is a wonderful description of Satyavan in Savitri in one line. The Veda knower of the unwritten book. So what is this unwritten book? So in the entire creation we can see knowledge. Here knowledge is blooming as a flower. Their knowledge is shining in the sun. Their knowledge is steady in the root of the hills. Their knowledge is flowing as the river, purifying, washing everything, carrying to the coast of the sea. Their knowledge is guiding in the night as multiple stars. And their knowledge is shining as resplendent moon. So when we look at life from the eye of knowledge, we'll see that there is a knowledge hidden in everything. What really is this knowledge? This knowledge is awareness of that ultimate reality which is expressing itself. So when we look at a flower, what do we really see? We see the form, we feel the fragrance, but we can go deep inside and discover the unformed beauty. So beauty is an aspect of the truth. So everything, even a grain of sand, see that famous line of William Blake, eternity in a grain of sand. This is how knowledge, if you pick up knowledge, we have to discover it everywhere, because the book of knowledge is everywhere. It is not confined to some particular, ideology, religion. This has been the big bane of religion. That's why religions are foredoomed to die. For example, God. We want to know about God. Now, where is God? So we habitually go to the temple, or to the mosque, or to the churches, Gurudwara, and we pick up a book and we do pranam, and we say God is here. So by default, is he only here? No. Everybody will say he's everywhere, but he will say, it's like universal brotherhood, I believe, but only those who believe in my religion. It is so absurd and people believe it. Why? Because they have never cared to reflect even a little bit about the thought of God. Where is God? Where is he not there? Isn't he everywhere? So if he is everywhere, is he not within me? Yes, of course. Look at it logically. So then what is this body? It is the temple of the Lord. So if it is the temple of the Lord, should I take care of it in the proper way or not? What do we allow within a temple or not? So we'll ourselves know that if this is the temple of the Lord, how we should keep the body and take care of it. What forces we should allow it to flow. The entire yoga can be discovered simply by this one thought that God is within us. And imagine if this idea goes into that everybody has God within. How will our dealings with others change? Automatically. We'll think twice before hurting someone. Oh, who knows? Sometimes we'll see, if we are not rigid, that God speaks even through the opponent. Somebody who is your opponent. Suddenly, if we are plastic and supple, he will seize the person's mouth and speech and the brain and use it to express something which actually God wants to convey, but through your seeming enemy. So this is how, when we start looking at life, we understand that all over. Similarly, we take up love, or we take up beauty. Where is beauty? Is it only in a form? Form is what? Is it just something outer figure, or is there form also in action? So we don't have to teach people manners, how you should be, how you should not be. Every action, every gesture should be beautiful. We'll discover beauty in the man who stands up for what he believes in, because there is something very beautiful about it. He has the courage. As mother says, it's beautiful, heroic action. What it stands, it has the courage to stand for what it believes in. So when we look at beauty, then we begin to discover beauty of speech, beauty of not just surroundings, beauty of thought, beauty of feelings. We worship the God of beauty. Or the highest of all, as far as I'm concerned, love. So what really is love? Where is it not? Then we discover that this love has woven the stars. Everything in this creation is an act of love. The stars and dust below my feet are all connected. In that web we cannot even see or fathom. Science is just catching an outer glimpse of what? This web of love. It uses the word interconnectedness. Attractions, attachments are all its ignorant misrepresentations, but there is a truth behind it. The truth is the truth of love. When we allow that to emerge, then this can drop off. Otherwise, it has to be there. So there are some people who say, I must practice detachment and become very indifferent. So this integration is not isolating things. Integration is to pick up everything and make it part of a vast synthesis. And for that, we must pick up the highest thought within us. And then finally, all these countless aspects of life. How are we to weave them together in a wonderful garland? And that's where we have to see that we have to pick up that which is still deeper, deeper than our own core. Our own core is faith and will to be in a certain way. But there is something still deeper. And that's what we see Gita at the climax. It speaks about Swadharma. It tells Arjuna that you focus on what your inner being inspires you. What is your inspiration? As a Kshatriya, you must fulfill this work, not as a duty, but because you are moved to do it. But at the same time, at the end, it cautions Arjuna. It says, Sarv dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. So for you, this is the truth. But for everybody, God is moving differently. So that is the beauty. That's how we can reconcile the Nar and the Narayana. I mean, there are many ways we can understand Nar Narayana fable, but one way is Nar is the individual. And Narayana is the one who dwells in the individual. So he is everywhere. So individual is the Vyakti and Narayana is Samasti. So while I have to act on the truth of my being, everybody has equally a right to act on the truth of their being. That is the principle of true democracy, not merely voting rights. I live by my truth. This is not that it is the highest or best, but for me, this is given to me. But for somebody else, say Arjuna, his highest truth is to be an instrument of God in this massacre which is going to take place. But for Buddha, that's not the truth. Shri Krishna would never tell Buddha, come, you are running away from your duty. He would not tell Sri Ramakrishna that, what are you doing? He would rather tell them, seek what you are doing. So, for Sri Ramakrishna, for Buddha, this was the truth that they pursued. So one has to go deep within and discover what moves one deep within. The faith and the will to be. All else is a crust. Ultimately, that is what we have to bring out in life, and with its glow, irradiate all the corners of our life. They must slowly, not forcibly. When people try to discipline themselves forcibly, it's not about forced discipline. I have my will to be, to be an instrument of God and I must push everything. No, it doesn't work like that, because every part has to be picked up and ennobled. Every part has the potential to become an instrument of God. So every aspect of our existence can be ennobled, can be refined, right down to the lowest, what we call as a base element. And finally, let's take that common example. For example, since before we conclude, one of the commonest mistakes people say is that in life we want happiness. So they will say, what is all this about integration? We don't care. Happiness is the need. But can we really be happy without integration? So what really is happiness? When we try to look at it, often I raise this question, what kind of happiness we want? Temporary happiness, superficial happiness, or lasting happiness? Choice is obvious. No, I want a happiness that would last. Okay, you want the very diluted version of happiness or pure spirit. So, ultimate happiness. So then you have to go through that phase. If you are clinging to this, you can't have that. So when it is said, Tene taktin bhunjita, by renouncing, it is not renunciation for the sake of renunciation. See the difference. Some people renounce and make it a great matter of great pride. So when they are coming into sabhas, see a great renunciate. He has renounced everything. Except the ego. So but look at when we renounce the lesser, it is for the sake of the greater. Not that we want the greater. So when we renounce pleasure, we will experience a state of inner happiness. When we renounce happiness, we discover a state of felicity which comes from the soul. Happiness is something which comes from the mind. Sattvic person. What does a sattvic person do? He renounces the pleasure because he understands that pleasure is not the path. So practice moderation. because of moderation, he lives in a state of happiness. And you say this is not enough. So when he renounces happiness, sukham, then he discovers the felicity which springs from the soul. And when he renounces even these, meaning thereby he is not wanting to live only in his soul for the joy of the soul, but to become an instrument of the divine. Then he experiences successively bliss and ecstasy. So this is a constant process of ascension. So what we mean is that whatever be the degree of integration and synthesis in our life, we must know it is temporary. Never make it permanent. Some people make things permanent and then become activists, like, very aggressive. I have seen people who become all organics. So yeah, so they almost fight with you. If they come to know you are eating milk, and sometimes I ask them, "Are you proselytizing?" or with evangelistic fervor, "Are you eating milk or milk products?" I mean, this one kind of that mentality is the same. For somebody, it may be fine, but so we must understand that this is a temporary structure. Whatever synthesis and integration, it is a temporary structure. If it helps us move further, fine. If it helps us become one. But the moment a new thing will come in life, it will change everything. And with that, I would end. We may take, before we turn to the divine, many of us, at least some of us, who have really experienced and tried this kind of synthesis. What do we live by? By a certain kind of ideal. So an ideal is the light with which we live. And we are not ready to compromise our ideal for anything. It could be an ideal of justice. It could be an ideal of truth, honesty, whatever. Lower down than ideals is principles. Principles are ideals taking a shadowy form. Principles are something external without knowing the basis within it. But when we know the basis, then it's an ideal. But there is a truth greater than the ideal. What if the divine consciousness demanded us to give this ideal in his hands and be liberated even from the mental prison, the highest, the best mental prison, the ideal? Should we do it or not do it? Sri Aurobindo's answer is, the Gita's answer is, we must do it. And that's what we see in Sri Aurobindo, that his highest ideal at a point of time was to live for the country, to do everything for the sake of the country. Even God was for the sake of country. But when Shri Krishna comes, Vasudeva, and tells him, there is something greater I have planned for you. Would you be willing to leave this? Without a second thought, Sri Aurobindo drops it and goes. Till date, people don't understand. So many of them pursued him. Come back, take this position in the, the National Congress and all this. Lead the country. The country needs you. But for him, it was the divine command, because he had discovered something greater than all mental ideals. So as long as we know that this synthesis is insufficient, it's sufficient for the moment, but it's insufficient or temporary, then we keep on progressing further. But if you make it as permanent, then that same thing which was very helpful becomes very rigid for future times to come. Okay, thank you. Thank you.